Since July 20th, 1993, when the body of Deputy White House Counsel Vince Foster was found at Fort Marcy Park, the American government, and more importantly the American press, have concealed the true facts of the death from the American people. Now, 10 years later, we hear from the leading government investigator that Vince Foster did not die the way officials have said. We now learn firsthand from the person in charge of independent counsel Kenneth Starr's Foster death investigation that Starr's investigation was a sham, and that its conclusion was determined even before the investigation began. Investigators altered the crime scene, and a few people controlled the outcome of the investigation. The press controlled how it would be reported. You are about to hear the voice of Miguel Rodriguez, a United States attorney working in Sacramento, California. Mr. Rodriguez resigned from Kenneth Starr's Office of Independent Counsel in the spring of 1995 when Kenneth Starr's staff frustrated his investigation. Mr. Rodriguez resigned because he refused to join the others in covering up Foster's murder. Mr. Rodriguez revealed the truth to over 100 people, journalists, congressmen, senators, and others in his attempt to get the facts of the case to the public. What you will hear are actual excerpts from some of these conversations. Only the voice of Mr. Rodriguez is heard in these excerpts to protect confidential sources. In this first segment, you will hear that Vincent Foster did not die the way Kenneth Starr's predecessor Robert Fisk had said. The evidence does not support the conclusion of suicide.
Okay, all I know is that things did not happen the way Fisk said that they happened, and the reports don't support what Fisk said. There's really nothing that's consistent with him, committing that kind of a violent act at all. Well, it did not happen the way Fisk said it happened.
One fact about Foster's death was the first rescue workers to arrive at the body saw very little blood. People who arrived later saw much more blood. Robert Fisk and Kenneth Starr falsely claimed that a quantity of blood was observed where the body was first discovered. Another false story by Fisk and Starr is that an early observer, a rescue worker, had moved Foster's head to check for a pulse.
By the way, you know why there was blood, by the way? What happened is there was, at the time they got there, and the body was in the position that it was in, there was virtually no blood anywhere. Then there are some conflicting reports about there being blood later on. Later, an EMT sees blood and Howard sees blood. Well, the reason is very clear. They lifted the body and pulled it to the top of the ridge, the top of the berm. And once they did that, blood started flowing fast. And then when they took the body and put it into the body bag, which was right, in other words, the body's on a slope. Then they pull the body up to the top of the berm. When the body is horizontal, or even at the top of the berm, it's not quite horizontal, it's a little bit of a back slope. All of a sudden, the blood starts gushing out. There's a lot of blood then under the body.
Miguel Rodriguez explains that the body was moved in the presence of Park Police Officer John Rolla, with the knowledge of medical examiner Dr. Donald Hout and others. Rescue worker Corey Ashford arrived to pick up Foster's body after it had already been moved. Crime scene photographs of the body as it was originally found apparently vanished.
Exactly, but Corey's also the one who, that's when the body's in the upright, not in the upright, but in a supine position on the top of the berm already. In other words, different than from the Ashford, and the persons who actually lift the body into the body bag don't see the body in its original position. They see it in a horizontal position, having been moved from a vertical position. And so when it's in the horizontal position, there is blood coagulating under the body before it goes into the body bag. That explains the difference in there being blood, and that's what Hout sees also. Hout asks that the body be rolled when it's in a horizontal position. So when Hout sees the body's in a horizontal state. And yes, there's going to be blood. You see, so Hout actually sees the body in two positions, and people are conveniently using different phrases of Hout to justify whatever result they want. Sure, Hout says, on one hand, there is no blood. Then he says, on the other hand, there is blood. In fact, a number of people have said there's a small amount where the body was originally found.
Mike Wallace of 60 Minutes and Jim Wooten of ABC News, along with other journalists, hoodwinked the public by broadcasting that there was plenty of blood where Foster's body was found. There was more tampering with the crime scene when the FBI re-landscaped the park where Foster's body was found, destroying evidence of park trails and entrances.
And do you really know what the egress and access is to the park? You have to go back to 1993. You have to go back to prior to the body being found and find out what access there was. Who knew about what access? And how has it changed? That's the whole point. Again, you guys really have to understand they've re-landscaped it prior to this. You know, they've changed gates, they've changed paths, they've changed trees, they've filled gullies, they've redefined the slope. You know, the whole thing was changed when I was there. The whole area has been re-landscaped.
Officially, Foster was found with a black Colt revolver in his hand. But that's not what the first witnesses saw. Richard Arthur, a paramedic at the scene, saw an automatic pistol. The investigators ignored this gun. The gun officially found in Foster's hand was not the same gun seen in Foster's hand when the first rescue workers arrived.
Even the park police and the person who first saw the body saw different things. Was there a point in time where the particular gun that you described arrives and something before that is either not observed or not completely identified?
Both paramedics at the scene saw a bullet wound in Vince Foster's neck. Miguel Rodriguez reviewed photographs of the body at the scene and also saw the trauma to Foster's neck. Fisk's report falsely stated, quote, "The photographs taken at the scene conclusively show that there were no such wounds," unquote. Starr's report states that the witness who saw the bullet wound in the neck, quote, "may have been mistaken," unquote.
Both EMTs, now you remember that when you have an emergency and you call the fire department, they will send their normal crew, and each crew may have an EMT with them who's a specially trained fire department person. Both EMTs that responded to the park both observed trauma to the neck. Well, Arthur remained clear on it despite the FBI's attempt to shake him. The other one was confused by the FBI and kept saying what he saw, but they kept writing it a different way. I saw pictures that clearly indicate to me that there is trauma on the neck. I believe it's a puncture wound in the neck.
Kenneth Starr's report on Foster's death states, quote, "According to Secret Service records, the Secret Service was notified of Mr. Foster's death at about 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time on July 20th, unquote. Paramedics and rescue workers were called at 6 p.m., and according to Miguel Rodriguez, the White House knew well before the first 911 call was placed.
No, there's indications that the White House and others knew prior to the time it was initially said to be discovered. There was notification made well before the time that EMTs were